Hey there, Twins fans. My name is Seth Stows of Twins Daily, twinsdaily.com. Be sure to check out the site where we've got tons of spring training content. We're 5 days away from opening day, and our good friend and pal Parker Hageman is down in Fort Myers with quite the view of Hammond Stadium there. It's kind of a nice place, man. I mean, look at those lines and everything.
Right. I mean, how could you not enjoy this whole setup and being able to see baseball happening? I know everyone in Minnesota is probably a little jealous because of the snow that's coming through this week, but just know that somewhere in the world there's Minnesota Twins baseball happening.
5 days from opening day, they play on Thursday in Kansas City, or at least that's the plan. Pablo Lopez gets the opening day start. You saw him; he pitched on the backfields this afternoon. Any concerns? How'd he look?
No, he looked great. Obviously, yesterday got a complete washout. So in order to keep him on schedule for his opening day start, they have the game tonight here in a little bit against the Red Sox. Didn't want to push Chris Paddock back because he's also trying to maintain his schedule. So they moved him up to a minor league game on the backfield, and he looked crisp, calm. After the post game talk was that he was working on landing his breaking balls, just making sure he had a feel for the slider, for the curveball. And boy, on display, he was breaking stuff off. The first inning was a little messy, gave up a home run to Kyle Teal, which was a legit shot. But, he was trying to establish corners with fastballs. He wasn't necessarily trying to strike people out at that inning. He said, inning 2, 3, as he started getting some chases, he was, working in that breaking ball and in that slider. And, it's Pablo Day. And I think fans are going to be excited about seeing that in Kansas City pretty soon.
Was he caught by a major league catcher, or were there any other guys playing down on the backfield?
Ryan Jeffers was his backstop for that one. Fun note there. Jeffers is in the dugout, and obviously, if you've been down here before, you can see in the backfields. It's basically being like in a high school baseball complex, right? You're through a chain link fence through these guys in the dugout. So Jeffers is talking to his middle infielders, and he says, "Hey, here's the signal for the it plays at second. We're gonna drop the glove." And he's going to go Pablo's going to turn on one, and, we're going to fire to second, just like we did with the with the Blue Jays and Vladdy. Unfortunately, they never had the situation with the runner on second to actually do it, but I was waiting to see that actually, happen. But you hear these guys and the pro guys like Jeffers, Pablo, they're talking to these minor leaguers, right, that are just trying to establish themselves.
Right.
You watch the minor league guys watching how Pablo warms up or how he goes about his business, and there's so much value out of that and just being around that I think Jeffers, same thing, talking with one of the other catchers down there. Like, there's so much learning that happens that it's impressive just to observe.
It absolutely is. I saw yesterday Brandon Winokur, their third round pick last year out of high school in California. There was a picture by Fort Myers native William Parmiter, and Winokur's dad posted it with a note. Winokur got a hit, a single, and then the next guy up was Carlos Correa, who hit a home run. And you see them dabbing at home plate. And, I mean, can you just imagine a 18-year-old kid and batting after him is Carlos Correa, and he gets to not only, dab with him, they probably talked. And, what an experience for those younger kids. And you see that in the spring training games as well.
Absolutely. And, what have we been coming down now for 10 years, more than that? But it does feel like there's more of that, and maybe that's something the organization values, is making sure the pro guys are mixing in a little bit more with the minor league guys, and it's same with the coaching staff, right? I mean, the coaching staff, Pete Mackey was there too, and he was observing the minor league guys the whole day, and I think that's something how you get the buy-in from top to bottom.
I want to get your thoughts, and I know you wrote something on this probably 4 or 5 years ago, when they grabbed Wes Johnson out of the college ranks.
Yeah.
That same year, they grabbed Pete Mackey out of Duke, also a college guy, to at that time be the minor league pitching coordinator. I want to say you talked to those guys either that year or the following year. And am I wrong in assuming, or do you assume also that Mackey and Johnson were kind of working together to develop that organizational pitching philosophy? So when Mackey took over for Johnson, it was pretty seamless, right?
Yeah, and you got to throw Derek Falvey in there as well, because right. He established that with Cleveland. I think he got the right people, the right leaders in spots. Wes Johnson, Pete Mackey, the college ball, right? That's where a lot of the boundaries were being pushed. A little bit more of the data, a little bit more of the metrics that have now permeated the game that we see out here that these guys are using as lingo, and that's how they went about it. Like they had their time to get these guys going, and Wes Johnson did a great job establishing it, and then Mackey also did well for himself. And I think from what I understand a little bit is that Mackey is a players coach guy too, a little bit more of that, and I think he's got their buy-in as well.
Absolutely. Real quick, we're talking with Parker Hageman live from Fort Myers. It's Saturday afternoon. Blah 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 blah. We need some music or something. Look at that stadium in the background. Tonight, I think it's 5:00 Central Time. I think 6:00 there. Twins versus Red Sox, who I know played this afternoon up in I think Bradenton as well. So anyway, let's continue the conversation. But for those watching on Twins Daily YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, feel free to send a message, send a question. We'll be sure to ask Parker to hear if he's hearing anything. When did you get to Fort Myers, Parker? How long have you been there?
What is today? Today's Saturday. I flew in Thursday night, and then of course right away the day was washed out, rain all day, and I was telling some of the other beat writers, hey, last time I was here it was COVID, so this is a little bit better, I suppose. So
it's a little better.
Today is today is sunny, and we're going to actually see a game over at JetBlue soon.
Oh, okay. I assume they were taking batting practice there to play there. I guess not.
Yeah.
Are you heading to the game tonight?
I'll be heading, making that drive across Daniels here in a little bit.
Perfect. I want to ask about the first story you kind of covered was the decision to reassign Brooks Lee. Obviously, 5 days away from the opening day for the big leaguers. I think 6 days away from opening day for AAA, and then about a week and a half away, a week and a half away from minor leagues getting started, almost 2 weeks. They reassigned Lee. He had like back spasms, which I mean I've had for like 18 consecutive years. But what are your thoughts on Lee, that decision? Is there any concern really with the back, or is it the kind of thing that they may keep him out rather than send him to St. Paul in the cold? That may not be the best for him, but is there any type of concern?
Well, the thing that Rocco wanted to stress, and same with Derek, was that the decision wasn't based on his back spasms, right? They just felt that he needs a little bit extra seasoning. It could be, there wasn't anything directly conveyed, but like, hey, he might need some work on the right side of the plate, maybe more work at second base, some things like that, just to figure out where he needs to be. But they do want to keep him here and kind of get an idea of how his back is doing and then reevaluate him. He wasn't going to play in any more spring training games, and you're right. I think there's probably a strong possibility that he just hangs back for a little bit longer before he ramps into everything. But the one thing that Rocco was extremely, he stressed and emphasized was that he was very impressed by how Brooks Lee carried himself, both offensively, defensively, and he made it seem like he turned a lot of heads and opened a lot of eyes just spending the time in camp. So I think the big takeaway was super productive, and you wouldn't be surprised to see him pretty soon with the Twins.
Yeah, it seemed like last year when he went to camp, he was very quiet. I mean, answered questions when asked questions. This year, he seemed to really be taking maybe he was more comfortable, but he seemed more vocal. He seemed more talkative. The Twins had him do some fun things as well. So I think that would be. I think that's a positive. It shows he fits in, and it's just a matter of how does he fit in. That's the question I was trying to ask or answer earlier today with in some comments fields on Twins Daily. What is the scenario you see in terms of how Brooks Lee would potentially, whether it's in April or July, get that call? And the fact that he only played shortstop during spring training games, does that really mean anything?
It's hard to see that playing out where, Carlos Correa, he's the long-term shortstop. Is there an instance where Edward Julian, he's not, not hitting, like, having a sophomore slump defensively, something lapses, that kind of thing. Is that now, you move on to Brooks Lee, Royce Lewis, he's had some injuries in the past. does Lee get some time at third? He played a lot of third for the Saints. I think it's not necessarily a if but a when sort of situation. Like he's going to be the first, probably the first in line to come up if something happens.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like if it's second base or center field, it might be Austin Martin. If it's left side of the infield or maybe even a left field type of a thing, maybe it's Martin. Maybe it's Lee on the left side of the infield. Maybe it's Larnick on the corner outfield. So they did this a year ago as it relates to the starting pitching, but this year it seems like they've really added that depth, position player wise and bullpen wise, which brings us to a question from Corey, which is who do you think has the most upside for pitching? So two questions or a couple questions there. The rotation is going to be Lopez, Paddock, Ober, Ryan, and Varland to start the year. And Varland may or may not make the opening day, but he'll be the fifth starter. Who has the most upside in that group? And then how do you feel? And it kind of speaks to what they've developed in the pitching that you talked about earlier. Number 6 right now might be Hedrick. It might be Simeon Woods Richardson. And this year they're choosing to rely upon that homegrown development and talent.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to what they've done this offseason too, I do think they have faith in who they can use within the organization, right? I mean, they've got that depth that we're talking about. If I'm just saying like the upside, it depends on how you want to view what upside means to pitching. But like if you're Louis Varland right now, who's going as a number 5, he could have a huge impact, right? I think he's got some of the better stuff. If you're quantifying it by stuff, metrics. It's part of him trying to figure out how to navigate an entire season and navigate, major league hitting a couple times, getting established. He kind of got hit around a little bit by right-handed hitters last year. Does he have the right stuff and mix to add to that? So I think Varland now has, especially, the opportunity that is in front of him, he has the ability to show that he could have the most upside in that rotation.
Forgot to hit. Yeah,
okay.
Hit on mute. Real quick, we don't want to take up all of Parker's time. We want to limit it to maybe 6-7 more minutes at most. But please, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. RB, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. And it is kind of fun to hear some of that news and the observations directly from Fort Myers. It's nothing like it, especially as we're getting close to the end of camp. So if anyone else wants to leave a comment on Twins Daily Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, please feel free to do so. Parker, what do you think as far as the depth of starting pitching? Honestly, as I look at the roster, and I mentioned it just a minute ago, I hope we haven't lost Parker, but we lost a little video there. I'm just going to keep asking the question because he is there. We did lose him just for a second. Again, I just want to, if you've got a chance, please feel free to leave a couple questions. I'm guessing that Parker will be back. He may have just temporarily lost his connection. There he is.
Hey,
Parker.
back in Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
The internet went out in Florida for a little bit.
Oh, okay. All of Florida has been messed up. And actually, I was leading into a question that Papa Murph is kind of asking the biggest concern heading into the season. I was going to lead in by saying with the lineup, with the defense, I feel like they have depth at every position. If someone goes down, you've got 1 or 2 guys that can replace them. In the bullpen, they certainly focused on maybe not high upside guys, but a lot of depth in the bullpen. In my mind, not having confidence maybe in number 6 and number 7, and maybe they do. That's my concern, is the starting pitching. Do you sense that's their concern as well, and is it yours?
Starting pitch in general, I think the emphasis on starting pitching in Major League Baseball, like with teams like the Rays and the Twins, there's a less emphasis for 7-inning guys or complete game guys, right? So the strategy now is to break up that game, by chunks, maybe 3 innings, 4 innings, 5 innings from your starter, move on to the next arm in the bullpen while keeping everybody healthy, because that's also a big part of it. But so to me, I'm not necessarily big into the starting pitching side and not as concerned about it. Now, like you talked about with some of their acquisitions from the bullpen, it's if some of those guys don't hit, like, or some of them, end up getting injured again, and you start losing some of that depth, that does, wrinkle your whole plans for the pitching side of things. So I think that is a concern, but I do think you mentioned it. They've mitigated some of that by getting a lot of depth. So I guess it's less of a concern than me. What you see here in spring training, I think they have one of the lowest offensive run producing teams in spring training. Again, spring training, who gives a bleep, right? But there is a concern if they don't come out hitting. Somebody gets cold, multiple bats go cold, and they got to figure out how to score runs.
Yeah, definitely always a concern. Thanks for the question. Papa Murph, real quick. Hey, Jason, it was kind of random walking into the local cafe. Shout out to Lakes Cafe in Perham. And just all of a sudden, are you Seth? I'm like, yeah. So that was a lot of fun. It was good to meet you there. Maybe next time we can get more than a 30-second conversation in. How about this? We got another question from Corey. If you could make a trade, who would you trade for? Trade for in someone else's farm system?
I'm guessing he's thinking about a prospect from another organization. To me, and this isn't, I think they just anointed him the fifth starter for the Miami Marlins, but I like Max Meyer, local kid from Woodbury, and vicious slider, vicious curveball, hell of a competitor. Like, I would want that kind of guy in the Twins rotation or bullpen.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Marlins are running out of pitchers with Yuri Perez injured. Jesus Luzardo kind of limited right now. Third-ranked Marlins prospect Matt Meyer, third overall pick in 2020 out of the University of Minnesota, has made the club's opening day roster. So very exciting. Congratulations to him. And absolutely, that's a guy I would very much like. A couple other things as it relates to the roster. Do you think there'll be any surprises on the opening day roster? We know Duran, Thielbar, any other injured list spots maybe that could alter the look of the bullpen or the opening day roster?
I would have thought, I think the only surprise remaining would have been Brooks Lee, seeing if he would have caught on. And I think that answered that question yesterday. So there's not a whole lot of wait and see who's doing what for arms. They're going to figure out, I know Derek Colby told the media group yesterday that they're making decisions on their final relief arm that they want to bring in, which has probably already been made. Knowing them, they just haven't officially announced it to everybody else yet.
All right. If anyone's got any last minute lightning round types of questions for Parker, get them in right now. Before we get to those, I want to talk a little bit about Baseball Day Minnesota. Living in Warroad, I got to experience just a little bit of Hockey Day USA and what Minnesota has done with that. Tell us a little bit about Baseball Day Minnesota and your involvement specifically in it.
Yeah, Baseball Minnesota is partnering with the Twins Community Fund to host Baseball Day Minnesota. And just like you'd see with the Hockey Day, the idea is to celebrate high school baseball in Minnesota. May 11th, there's 3 games set at Minnetonka High School Field. Beautiful setting, turf field. So hopefully the weather, if it holds off, and if it rains a little bit, we'll still get ball in because it's turf field. We got some pretty key matchups showing up there: Minnetonka versus Wayzata, Crete-Durham Hall versus Stillwater, and East Ridge versus Woodbury, or the other way around. But again, top prospects in this whole thing. Just trying to give a little bit more of a spotlight to Minnesota, and the Twins are going to do the game day experience to make it seem like a pro game for the high school kids there. There'll be TC Bear, T-shirt cannon stuff, things for the youth clinic for kids to play at. So it's pretty exciting. And again, we're all baseball guys. We're both from Minnesota. Seth, you played high school baseball. I don't want to say high school baseball in Minnesota is an afterthought, but it's certainly not at the status of hockey, football, basketball, and we're just trying to give that a little bit of a spotlight.
No, that's great. And honestly, what you're doing with the Pro Baseball Report, PBR. Talk a little bit about that because you see it often, and hopefully people are following you guys on Twitter, but it is so much fun to see those Minnesota kids, even when they sign with a Division II, Division III type of a school, getting recognized for the quality of play, and these types of events hopefully will only help that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, kids from smaller towns that, they might not be able to go on travel ball circuits or, they play multiple sports. Perham being an example, right? They have tons of athletes and some good baseball players, but what PBR does is try to help that kid get his video, get his numbers out to, schools that might be a little bit outside of Minnesota, in the Midwest, or even in Minnesota. College coaches scour those things to see who's an athlete, what numbers are getting put up, and they find guys that might not have had opportunities 5-10 years ago. So that's really the basics of what PBR is just trying to help guys, give them a tool to help themselves in their college career.
Real quick, do you want to give that link and the Twitter handle, and we'll
absolutely. It's Prep Baseball MN is the Twitter handle. PrepBaseballReport.com is where you'd find it under the Minnesota tab. So there's a lot of info. If you follow the Twitter, we'll be putting out more stuff and kind of highlighting some of the players that are going to be playing in the games, highlighting some of the history of the programs, and just trying to make it a fun day for everybody.
Baseball Day in Minnesota, May 11th at Minnetonka High School. Be sure to follow those sites for much more information as we get closer. All right, real quick, just a couple of other things came in. Jason saying, I'm not sure why, but I'm excited to see Carlos Santana in a TC and not on a divisional opponent. He's been with Cleveland. He's been with, was he with Kansas City briefly?
Briefly with KC, yeah.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts? Santana, you got Kirilloff over at first base, DH time?
If you defined a professional hitter, like he is that. Carlos Santana is the professional hitter. I think that's something that the Twins lineup is going to enjoy having around, especially with some of the younger guys, running from a guy like that. I do like the way he phrased that question because that makes me think, and I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Seth. Who, growing up or, just watching the AL Central for all those years, who would you have wanted to take off a team and put on the Twins?
That's a really good question because there have been good players. I mean, Frank Thomas was amazing, right? And I always almost hate the term Twins killer because like Edgar Martinez was a Twins killer. Well, Edgar Martinez is a Hall of Famer. He killed a lot of teams. Miguel Cabrera, you'd love to take him. To me, it's guys like Lance Johnson, from the White Sox. Yeah. If you remember him, a slap singles hitter. I honestly like a Whit Merrifield. I'm surprised the Twins didn't give a little bit of attention to him this offseason because he just, what do they call him? 2-hit Whit. And it was literally 2 hits and probably a stolen base and maybe a nice defensive play somewhere. It could be second base, center field, right field. So, it's guys like that. It's tough to say, but you want to take those. I'll take Verlander from the 10, 15 years ago or Scherzer, but I don't know. I enjoy following those guys that maybe beat up on a team but didn't get that kind of recognition. All right, last question, and then we'll let you go here, Parker, to enjoy your time there in Fort Myers. From RB, what positions are the Twins heavy in the farm? Pitching? Question mark.
I guess you got to say that's probably the biggest strength that they have. One, it's not that they necessarily target top premium arms. I think they're just really good at getting a good arm and making them better throughout it or adding to what they already had, right? It's not like when you look at the drafts and all this stuff and a Jack Leiter type thing where it's like, oh, this guy, Hunter Green. They don't get those guys. They get some other guy that has a pretty vicious curveball or something and add to it or get him velocity or get him consistency. So, that's obviously you can never have too much pitching, right? So I think that's how the Twins fall in line with that.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of depth with hitters in the upper levels. I think they've got a lot of depth with pitching throughout the organization. A guy like what you mentioned, David Festa, I think he was 11th, 12th round out of was it Boston College? Does that sound right? Or is it Seton Hall? One of those up there in the Northeast. throwing 90, 91 out of college. Now they've got him throwing 95 to 98 consistently, and he's got a plus slider and a plus changeup. A guy like CJ Culpepper came in throwing 6 pitches. He's still throwing 6 pitches because they like all 6 of them. Other guys come in and they may get rid of a pitch and try something different. So it'll be interesting. Last year it was the sweeper. It sounds like this year it might be the split finger. There's always a little something changing from year to year. Parker, I'll echo Jason's thoughts here and just say thank you again for all you do. Enjoy your time down there. Maybe we'll do this again one of the next couple of days if you're there for a little while. But
absolutely.
Or if anything comes up that you say we have to go live, let me know. But thanks again, and thanks to everyone for listening and for all the great questions. Have yourselves a great rest of your weekend. Parker, thanks.
Take care.
All right, and as